Okay, so now we're going to do a palindrome. And for those of you that don't know what a palindrome is, it's a word that's spelled the same forwards as it is backwards. So, like wow, kayak, rotator, these are words that are spelled the same when they're reversed. So, we're going to do that, which is similar to reverse string. You're going to see some similarities. And I know some of you, if you're experienced with algorithms, are going to think that this is really easy. Some of you might think it's really hard. Everyone's different, so I try to pick, things that are beginner friendly, but also a little bit intermediate. So let's create a folder called Palindrome, and we're going to create our two files. So palindrome.js and also palindrome.test.js. Okay, and we're going to write our tests first. So let's say const, we'll have a function called palindrome, and that's going to be in the ./palindrome file, and then we're going to describe our test suite. We'll just call this palindrome. Oops. Okay, and then we'll have our first function here, and this is going to take in our it. I don't know why it does that. Okay, so it, let's say, should be a function, and I mean, you don't have to do that, keep doing the same should be a function. I just like to be consistent. So should be a function, we're going to say expect and say type of, and the function name, which is palindrome. Don't do this, just the function name, and so we'll say to equal, and that should be a function. Okay, now I'll just copy this down, and it should return a Boolean. So let's say should return a Boolean. So for that, we're going to say type of palindrome, and then we're going to run it. We'll just pass in hello, or you can pass in anything. We just want to make sure that this returns a Boolean. So here we'll change function to Boolean. So again, this is testing to see that it's a function, but down here testing to see that it returns a Boolean. So we want it to return true if it is a palindrome. So I'll actually just copy this down. So let's say we want this to return true if is a palindrome. So for expect, actually let's get rid of this, and inside expect, let's do palindrome. So we're going to call the function, and then I'm going to pass in a palindrome that should be true. So we'll do kayak. So K-A-Y-A-K. So you can see it's spelled the same both ways. Now, we could do to equal true, but there's also a method called to be truthy. So we can say to be truthy. So we'll use that instead because we've used just to equal up until now. So we'll do that. We'll do a couple more. So we have kayak. Let's do rotator. So that's going to be the same. And then let's do wow. Okay, so return true if it is a palindrome. Now we want it to return false if it's not. So I'll copy this down, and let's say return false. Should return false if is not a palindrome. So let's do some stuff that is not. So we'll say hello. Let's do world, and I don't know, bye. And we don't want this to be truthy, we want this to be falsy. Okay, so we have to be truthy and to be falsy. All right, and then finally I just want to say that it should return false if it includes spaces, because like we don't want, space wow is not gonna equal wow. So let's do that. So just copy that down and we'll say should return false if spaces, or if includes spaces. So if we have like space, and even if it is a palindrome like wow, then that should be false. So we'll leave to be falsy. All right, so that should do it. Now in Palindrome.js, we want to create a function. So let's say function palindrome. Okay, and then that's going to take in a string. So pass in str. And the first solution, I'm just going to give you two. So say solution 1. And again, I would encourage you to try to do it yourself. The first solution is very similar to what we just did. If you think about it, when we reversed a string, it's almost the same thing, except we're returning a condition. So just keep that in mind. Just pause, try it yourself. So I'm going to say const, and I'm going to create a variable called reversed. And I'm going to reverse it the same way we did in the first solution of the last video. So we'll split it into an array. Then we're going to reverse, right? So we're going to reverse it, then we're going to join it back into a string. And then all we have to do is simply return, is that string equal to the reversed version? So simple. And that's going to be true or false. So now let's module dot export palindrome, and then we'll run our tests, and they all pass. So I'm going to give another solution. So we'll say solution 2, and let's just make sure we comment this one out. And we'll create a function palindrome, takes in a string. All right, so what I'm going to do here is return, and I'm going to take the string and turn it into an array. So we're going to split, and then I'm going to use the every method. I can't remember if we've used this in the course yet. So it's a high order array method. So basically it loops through. So we're going to have a function, and we're going to say for every character, because it's an array of characters, right? We split the whatever string is into an array of characters, and I can also get the index, which I'll call I. Actually, we'll call it index just to be a little less confusing with loops. All right, now in here, what I want to do is basically, let's just use wow as an example. Don't type this. I'm just showing an example. So we're going to loop through here for every character, and what I want to do is test to see if the character that's in this index is in the last index. Maybe wow isn't a good example. So I'm going to test to see if this is in this index, if this is in this index, and so on. Okay, so basically we want to compare each character to the end, the end of the string. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. It's kind of difficult to explain. But we're going to return character and say, is that equal to the string? And remember, we can get the index of the string, like 0 would be the first word, first letter, and so on. But we want to start at the end. So we're going to say string dot length, and then we just want to minus whatever the current index is, okay, because we want to start at the end and move back. But we also want to minus 1 because arrays are 0 based. So that should do it. It's basically going to test this against this, this against this, and so on to see if it's a palindrome, see if it's the same reversed. So let's save that and let's run it. And we get passed. All right. So if you have another solution, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that the test pass. All right. Now in the next video, we're going to get away from strings a little bit and get into array chunking.